We are going to discuss about chapter 11. In this we are going to discuss about sequential and parallel loading, how we are going to load the data from source to staging, staging to target, and we will discuss about using an union transformation, how to load data, and also about a dynamic lookup cache. Before this, we will review the previous chapter where we discussed about SVD type 2, slowly changing dimension type 2, loading the data into dimension employees table. In this mapping, we discussed about slowly changing dimension type 2, which contains history plus current data. The logic is if the employee ID which is coming from your staging table exists in my dimension employee table, or if it does not exist in my dimension employee table, you have to insert that record, that is corresponding employee ID does not exist, so insert the record with the new surrogate key. If the record exists, the corresponding employee ID exists in the target table, then you have to update the end date. To get the end date, you have to do date entered -1 and insert record along with the new sequence number. This was the basic logic of SVD type 2. So in the mapping, what we did was, in the expression transformation, we got the end date, that is date entered -1, but we said it as date entered, as renamed it as start date in our expression transformation, and we calculated the end date, that is start date -1. For that add to date function we have used. Then to find the employee ID exists or not in the dimension table, we did a lookup. Then in the routers transformation, the employee surrogate key which is coming from my lookup table, if it does not exist, it will have a null value. If it is a null, then the corresponding record will be inserted. For that we use the update strategy. Along with the sequence generator, we inserted the data into the dimension table. If the record does exist, the corresponding employee exists, then employee surrogate key will return a null value, return a value. If it returns a value, first we updated the target table for that end date based on that employee surrogate key. Again, the record was being inserted along with the new sequence number. If there are multiple employee IDs, then we override the lookup SQL override, where the default select statement we override where end date is null to get only the current data from that dimension table. So because we need that records only to be updated, so we did a lookup SQL override. This is what we have done in SVD type 2 of dimension employee table mapping. Now coming to this chapter 11, we are going to discuss about sequential parallel loading, employees loading, source to staging, target, create and execute mapping for union transformation and dynamic lookup cache. So let us discuss in projects. When you go into the projects in a data warehouse space, how a ETL works. Basically, you are going to load data from source to staging. Then another set of mappings will be used to extract data from staging to the dimension and fact tables. That may be a data mart or a data warehouse. So to load data, first we will execute the staging mappings, then we will execute the staging to target mappings. In a workflow, before go to workflow, for every session you can assign only one mapping. A mapping can have multiple sessions. Same mapping can have multiple sessions. In a workflow, you can have one session or multiple sessions. If you have multiple sessions in a single mapping, then which one to load first or which one to load last? That is, if you are loading the one session after another, then it is called sequential loading. Or if you execute multiple sessions, that is more than one session at the same time, then it is called parallel loading. You can have single session or multiple sessions in a workflow. If you execute one session after another, that is called as sequential loading. If you execute multiple sessions at the same time, then it is called parallel loading. Now let us take the example of from a data warehouse perspective of our employee load. With employee load, we have to extract the data from source files and load to stage. Staging database. Then from staging database to dimension employee. But before we execute staging to dimension employee session, source to staging session has to be executed before, because dependency, it's called dependency mapping. That is, only after loading the data into staging, you can load the data from staging to the dimension employee table. Means you have to execute one session after another. This is called sequential loading. Now coming to the data warehouse concepts when we discussed, that is from source to staging, you load the data. But you will delete, but we have to delete the previous data in your staging table. In your staging table. So that is what we were working, we discussed in data warehouse concept, because if you load today's data into staging and from staging you load at the dimension table, next day when the new data comes from source, you have to delete the previous data in your staging area before you load the data into the dimension table, sorry, into the staging table. This we have discussed when we discussed about source to staging, staging to the data warehouse or data market data warehouse concepts. So with the fundamental rule that when we load the data into the staging, we have to delete the previous data in the staging table. First we will handle this, how to do it. Let us go to the mapping we have done from, let us go to the mapping we have done from source to staging of STG employee lookup. Now what is our logic? Before you load the data into the staging, previous data has to be deleted. So we have to write some delete on the staging table. So to delete the data from the staging table, in SQL what we do, we write a statement, delete from staging underscore employee. Want to delete the data. Same thing we will write delete from staging underscore employee table, where we can write from the target table STG employee. And talking about mapping 7 with the lookup, that STG employee table properties pre-SQL, that will write delete from STG employee table, STG underscore employee table. So please write it down, this statement, how to write it. The seventh mapping of your employee lookup, you want to delete the data from this table. So when it will happen, there are two things in this. This is target table properties. I'll go once again, go to the target table, double click properties. In pre-SQL or post-SQL you can write it. Pre-SQL means then before the session is executed, when the session is executed, just before the data extraction process takes place, this statement, in whichever statement you write in this, it will be executed. Or write post-SQL, after the pipeline is run, is extracted, it will execute. So we need to write it in pre-SQL, delete from STG employee table. So when the session is executed, just before the source data is extracted, the statement will delete the data in the target table based on this statement. So under pre-SQL, write the statement delete from STG employee table. For error also we will write it properties pre-SQL delete from error employee table. Write down this delete from ended with semicolon pre-SQL. So delete from error employee table. So I will delete the data in my staging table and execute this session. So as per our data warehouse understanding, we will load data from source staging to the dimension tables and tag tables. From source to staging, when you load the data, you will keep the previous data. We will put data in the staging table. We'll store only the records which we require. So to do that, in the target table properties, in pre-SQL, for the properties pre-SQL, we write this delete statement. And it executed when you extract the data from the source, but it will fire on the target table. So we have written delete statement on both the target tables. Make it the records before it loads the data into the staging table. Then save your mapping. Now let us come to the concept of sequential loading parallel. Let us go to the workflow. For the task developer, drag your session of a up, say refresh mapping because we have changed it. Sometimes it gets refreshed, sometimes it won't get refreshed. Check it up. It has refreshed, but it will not show you. How will I know? Whatever you have written in the target, the target property, go down, it will what you have written in the mapping, to delete from STG employee table. Then now we want to execute the session workflow. Let's put it as employee loading, employee table loading. First, we need to extract and load data into staging. Then afterwards, we need to extract data from dimension employee table. So this is called sequential loading. One session will be executed, then session will be executed. One after another it gets executed. This is called a sequential. Or you want to execute simultaneously, concurrently, then this is called parallel loading. As soon as you execute, both will start executed. Then have combination of sequential and parallel loading also, like this. Just I'll give an example. Like this also. Don't go by the session names. Example. Parallel loading and this sequential. Parallelly both will be executed. When this completes execution, then this start execution. Sequential. For this is loading. For this it is parallel loading. But we don't need this. We want to load sequentially one after the another. So when you execute the session one after another, it's called a sequential loading. So till now what we have done, we ensured that data from source to staging, and from staging to the dimension table, we create a proof. We want to execute one after another. As per our requirement, when you put the data into the table, it has to be, previous data has to be fit. So in the target table properties, under pre-SQL attribute, we have written as delete from underscore employees in execute when the session is hit. Once the records are extracted, it will the data in the target table. So source to staging, staging the dimension tables, sequential loading and parallel loading. Now this workflow employee loading, let us do something more. For practical purpose, after this here, now please be focused. What is practical purpose? Let us imagine in a project what happens. Files are sent to the ETL team, get it on informatica server. Files are sent to the ETL, get it on informatica server. Now these three files which they have sent, again next on day one, they have sent you three files. Again on day two, again they sent you files. Regarding this files movement and all that, command task, backup, the backup directory and all that stuff. That is practical in a project. Now in a project sense, let us do it for lab purpose. What we have done already is, there are two folders. For this lab purpose we are talking about, there are two folders in as 02 Jan 2003. Another folder has 03 Jan 2000. These folders contains sets of data. First time when we load January 2nd data and load it into staging. Staging, second mapping will take it, take up and data into employee. Then we'll come back We'll take the data of 3rd January from our another folder, and we will go 3rd January data. Then we will end date has now. Practically every day they will send in projects, they will send the files, how to backup directory and all that. For lab purpose, what we do, we have to the 2nd January to now under SRC files 2nd January data. How will I know? Open this file. Last column is date entered. Last column will have data of 2nd January 2003. Same way in 3rd January 2005 files, there is the last column is 3rd January. See, for lab purpose, set 2 sets of data, sets of files. Now we'll extract the data of 2nd January to come back and load 3rd January data. For a lab purpose, we have done like this. Practically, it has to move that source underscore files one set of data. Next day, the second set of data has to come there. That's very difficult in the lab. So, incorporate that, because in one folder itself I kept the data. Some people might load data late, or some people are still working on mapping challenge for us. We did for the lab purpose, set 2 and 2 folders. And first time you run the session, what you have to do, write it down. Open your mapping session, mapping, go to the file. Here just add a directory 0 Jan 2003. Add a directory of 02 January 2003. So it will pick up the data from 02 January 2003, goes to this employee list file, goes to these files and extracts and loads the data into staging it data into the challenge. But for practical lab purpose, we'll go to that staging map session. For the source connection, we will add on to the path. Already the path is C:\, INF server, the files, and 02 Jan 2003 for first time. Second time, we'll change that 02 Jan 2003 to 03 Jan 2003. So second time when you execute it, it will take that data from 3rd January to 3. Please write it down this. I don't have a sheet. Write it down somewhere. And also I don't have a detailed specification document. We don't have this of creating a workflow for sequential and parallel loading. We are going to do now workflow employee loading. We don't have. Please write it down there. So create a workflow for employee loading. Get the 2 sessions there. And please write it down this first time and second time. This don't forget it when you have. So till now what we have done, I have written a delete statement on the target table for a C mapping. Came back and refreshed it. Then at the staging session, we have added this 02 January 2003. Saved it. Then workflow staging dimension. Let me check that once more. Double check. Save my work. Now we are going to execute the data, execute the workflow. Please observe it has executed the first map. Then afterwards, second session. But what we will do is, let us delete the data from my dimensional employee table. So before you execute this, we have to delete the data from dimension employee table because we have loaded with the previous mapping. Then delete it, ensure that there is no records in the dimension employee table. Then we rerun this again, start workflow. Now let us check the data, dimension employee table. Load first time. All will have the start date only because there is no data in this dimension table. So you have 85 records. Yes. Select start from dimension as loaded 85. How do I know? Colon 2nd January. Those same set of data which we have used data on that data only. So if you get the number of records, 29 lines, but you remove the header, it has 28. Remove 1, it has 20. Header employee. 7 records in employees. Employee central. Now 29 records, but 1 record you remove it. 20, 28, 55. Employee west. As please look at the line numbers 32. Header 1, remove 1, 31. Header 1, 130. 55 plus 30. Let us go to the staging. Select the data, number of records. It will also have. Now next day, data has come. Assume that there are 3 set files has come next day. Track projects, you remove that data, those files, wait for these files to come. As I said, we cannot do it practically in the lab. So for practical purpose, what we do is, there is a third set on 3rd January 2003. These records, let us see how many records it has. Employee west, 15 records this has. Employees, just 7 records. 10 plus 7 plus 6, 28 records. Total 28 records to get into the area. Before it loads, it has to delete this data as per our logic. Then it has to load the data into the dimension table. So how to do it practically? Go to that session, write it down. Go to that session next time. Then open the session mapping, change, make a change here. When you run second time, 3rd January 2003. That is the second time, change, go to January 03 January, third session, under your mapping tab, for the source connection, the path, just change it from 2nd January, 3rd January. So let us go ahead and change it, 3rd January 2003. Go to the workflow designer, save your work first. Again, we need to execute this for our logic. Data has to be deleted in the target staging table. We will see practically now, is it deleting the data or not. So let us go here. Records it has loaded from those files, and their date entered is 3rd January 2008. Some records might be, some records might not be. So let us get it. For the same employee ID, there should contain 2 records. That is 8645. We are testing it now. Where employee ID is equal to 86455. There is a change in the address. First record was loaded here, and it has got updated. Then it has entered the new record. So how it works in SCD type 2. It updates the end date, record start date -1, gets it as a new record. This is what is a dimension employee table loading from source to staging, staging dimension table. So first time when you load the data, to delete the data in the dimension employee table, then automatically the process takes. Now I'll discuss the simple mapping and transformation. Right. There is Informatica provides you with a union transformation. For that transformation, when you example, I have 2 sources. One is a table, one is a flat file. I want data from both the sources. Right? Items target use table. Items target use table. I was not able to incorporate this in the dimension employees, dimension in flat loading. So what we have done is just to explain you the union transformation. Created a small example. The tables are source items and orders.txt file, source items and orders.txt. There are 2 sources. We need to load data into items target use. The table in TGC database, we kept it like that, no staging and all that stuff to explain you the union transformation. For that purpose only we incorporated this example. So I have 2 sources, source underscore items and orders.txt. I need to load the data into items target union. Load data into items target union. The requirement is get the data from both the sources. One is a table, one is a file. This is my requirement. I want item ID, item name and price into target table, item target union. So how to do? First, we'll go and define the structure. Source code from database. Go to the source SRC ODBC connection. First table is in the SRC database. So you have to go to the SRC connection. Please focus. We are going to the SRC ODBC connection. Items. Then import from file. For class examples, orders.txt. The tab delimited file. Finish. Go to the target. Go to TGT database only. Items target union. Let us create the mapping. Underscore 13 underscore items underscore target and drag your source item orders.text file, put data into target. Then what we want as per our ETL document, item ID, item name, price. The item ID, item name, price. Here, item number, item name, price. And I need the complete data to be loaded from. If I use a joiner, it satisfies the condition. Get it. I want the complete data from this. So what I do, I use a transformation called in transformation. Tax for union is then I use like a router, but this will contain two input groups, one output. Go to group. One group name as items group, another group as orders group. Then what are the output ports for this? Item ID, set, item name, string, price, decimal. So this is what we want to take it out. We have created, which are going to put here transformation, item ID, item name, price, then item number, item price. From want to load data into target table. Simple transformation. We'll get the data from both target table. For that purpose, transformation. So before I go further down, go ahead and write this paper 16.8.1 source underscore source, that is your ID underscore SRC, surname SRC underscore informatica, password read only, to import the source structure for orders.text file, equivalent class underscore example. Then to get the target table, we have to go to T database, so ODBC connection for ID underscore T, surname T underscore ID, password T underscore ID. Write down this section also. Connection SRC, source file directory, orders.text, run server slash SRC underscore files. Please write it down. Case 13. Now we will discuss load the data. Let us go and check the data in the target table. There are no records. We'll go to the source database. Select to start from source underscore items. Source underscore items. So how many records this has? Records. Under orders.text file. Records. 10 records. So it has to load 41 records. Yes. Basically, take the 30. Now we have to source connection, source underscore items, container src, orders, the path, then for target, change the bulk to normal, underscore target, save your right click and convert. Let's go to the target table, the data, for the one. So now you hear nothing in transformation, getting data from two, get all the data from two sources, then the union transformation, go to the create the group that are going to be input to it, items and orders. Now the group ports have to be taken out, item size, connect it, put the data into the target. Now work on in transformation. Next we will discuss mapping of staging to dimension customer table of SCD1. I want to introduce you to something new in that same mapping. Let us discuss this. Let's assume that the data coming into the staging area will have customer ID 101 Steve Chicago version 1.0. For same customer ID, there are different versions in the source system that has been loaded into your staging table. Now, as per your SCD1 concept, we'll check 101 exists or not in my dimension table. Then, if it does not exist, you insert it. If you check 102, if it does not exist, you insert it. Now let us assume the requirement. Please understand the requirement very carefully here. In this source system, if a customer changes his address, it will be a new record in the source system, but it is indicated by these versions. In the source system, when the data is entered, they will store the data with versions. So on a particular day, 103 joined. When you join, it is version 1. On the same day, he changed his address. By mistake, there was a name, they typed a different address. So they captured it as a new record in the source system, like your bank account. By mistake, if they make any mistake, they don't delete that record. They will nullify it with another record. For example, by mistake, they deposited 10,000. They don't delete the record. Again, they'll create another transaction saying minus 10,000. They'll give the reason, but it will not. They will not delete it. Same way here, the customers, when he joined, he has the address. By mistake, also, if you enter a new address, they won't modify. They insert it as a new record. Please understand this requirement. Then only you will understand the next steps. So, extract the data and load it into your staging. Example, in your south zone, office or your staging. Check first record comes from the staging area or the south zone office. 101 exists, so you go and update it. Please assume that it is staging to the dimension table. It will update it. Second record comes in 1013 does not exist, so it will go and insert it. Third record 103, it will check it. Does it exist? Yes. So it will go and update the record. STD type 1, if the record exists, update it. If the record does not exist, you insert it. But assume that on the same day you have two records of the same customer with different versions. Version indicates the difference between those two records. If I don't put the version here, as per this source system requirement, some may put a date, some may put a time. In this requirement, they'll put versions. First record, when you insert it, 1. Next time you change the address, they will insert it as a new record, but version changes to 2. If you go and change your address again, they'll insert it as a new record in the source system, and it's a version 3. So this is your staging table. From there, you load the dimension table. Now, how we do it in Informatica? Remember STD type 1. You have the source qualifier, expression, lookup, then group by, router, now as soon as you execute first time, please observe the data from staging. Lookup does not contain any data, does not contain the data in the cache, because there is no data in my dimension table. So first record comes in, scan the cache, does not exist, you insert it. Second record comes in, scan the cache, lookup does not exist, the customer ID, null value, so you go and insert the record. Then, now, next time, when you execute it, this is the record in your staging table. 1003 customer has two records, version 1 and version 2. Now, 101 goes, scans the cache, record exists, returns the value. As per our logic, it will go and update the record in your dimension table. Now please observe here. 103 comes in, scans the cache, record does not exist. So it goes, returns a null value, so it goes and inserts the record. Second record of 103 comes in, scans the cache. This is where is the, look at the data. Whenever you execute a session in Informatica, if it has a lookup transformation, for that, as soon as the session is executed, at that time T1, it goes and gets the data into the cache. It goes and gets the data into the cache. While the session is running, if you are making any changes to the table on which the lookup is done, in our case, dimension customer table, please observe it here. We have updated the record when the session is running. We have inserted a new record into dimension customer table, but it may not reflect the changes in my lookup cache. This is called a static. There are three types of caches: static cache, dynamic cache, and persistent cache. This is called a static lookup cache. Whenever you create a lookup transformation, by default it is static. I'll show you now where it is. Whenever you open your lookup in the properties, this is the lookup caching enabled. Lookup caching enabled means static cache. Lookup caching enabled means static cache. So lookup, this is static. What is the static is all about? Whenever the session is executed, it will fire the select statement onto that table on which you did the lookup and gets you the data and puts it in the lookup cache. Gets you the data and puts the data into your cache. While the session is running, it will not reflect the changes, whatever are happening in the dimension customer table as per this mapping. That's why this cache is called lookup cache, static. Now assume now 103 has come. Let's go back to our discussion. It scans the cache. What happens as per your informatica mapping? It will return a null value, so it will go and try to insert a record as a new record, which as per our dimension customer table requirement, this is a CD type 1, it should have updated the record, it has inserted the record. Then where is the problem? I'll explain you once again the problem, you have to understand it. Now, I'm going back the step. In the dimension customer table, you have the records for 101 and 102. When you execute it, lookup cache will contain, puts the data, selects the data from the dimension customer and puts it in the cache. And this is your stage customer table. Source data is extracted. Now 101 scans the cache. Does that record exist? Yes. So it will return a value. Goes to the group condition. As per your logic, it will go and update the record. You made the changes to the San Jose for 101, but that does not reflect in this lookup cache because lookup cache is static. As soon as the session is executed, it will go and get the data. While the session is running, it will not go to that cache, to the table on which you did the lookup and get the data. It will not work like that. If session executes, at that time it will go and gets the data into your cache. Then the second record comes in, scans the cache. 103 does not exist, so it goes and as per logic of lookup, as per the logic of lookup, it will return a null value. Why it will return a null value? 103 does not exist, it will return a null value. Then the subsequent logic, because it is a null, it will go and insert it. The second record of 103 comes in, again it scans the cache. Record does not exist, but in a database at that time the record exists, but it will not reflect in the cache. So what lookup will do? It will return a null value. But actually, as per our logic, it should have returned a value of 103. Then you would have updated it. But here, because it has returned a null value, the subsequent logic, it will go and insert it, which is incorrect as per this dimension customer table logic of SCD1. So what you do? The issue is lookup cache is not getting reflected the changes happening in the dimension customer table. And our requirement is same customer can come multiple times on the same day. If he comes on a different day or a different session, no problem. But if it is in the same session, multiple records of the same customer ID, as per our dimension customer logic of SCD1, as your lookup is static cache, because it will not reflect the changes, so it will give you incorrect data. So let us imagine what it should have done. Whatever, when you have, go back, step back. I'm going 103. I'm going back a step. 103 John San Jose 1.0. I should have created a mechanism in my lookup. If the condition is failed, fine. But somehow I insert the data in this. In the cache, I will somehow insert my customer ID into this. When the condition failed, it will return whatever it has to return. But after returning it,
I should have a mechanism which I can put the 103 in my lookup cache. So assume that I put the data 103 in my lookup cache. What happens now? When 103 John Texas 2.0 comes in, if somehow if I would have put it in the cache, when it scans the cache, it would have found the record. So dynamically, while I run the session, I should have inserted the record into my cache. Whenever the condition fails, whenever the record does not exist, I should have inserted the data into the cache. That is called dynamic. You are going to insert the data into the cache dynamically. So that it will be easy for you for the next record, as per your logic, if you want the record exists in my dimension table. So dynamically I should insert the data into the lookup cache. For that purpose, Informatica provides you a concept called the dynamic lookup cache. So the problem is understand it very carefully. The problem is in the lookup. Lookup cache is static. Static means when the session is executed, as soon as the session is executed, lookup goes to the table, gets the data and puts it into your lookup cache. While the session is running, it will not get the data into the cache. It will not reflect, I will put it this way, it will not reflect the changes happening in the table on which it is doing the lookup. In our case, dimension customer table, when the customer ID 103 comes in, it scans the cache of the lookup does not exist as per your logic if it is inserted. Again, with the same customer ID, data is coming in, second record of same customer ID, it scans the cache of lookup but does not exist, so it will return a null value. But again, as per your logic, it will go and try to insert it, but as per the complete mapping logic, it should not insert, it should have updated the record, but lookup is not giving the reflected values. So somehow with a mechanism, when 103 comes in, and if the record does not exist in the cache, somehow we will insert it dynamically into the cache. And whatever logic Informatica does, as per our mapping logic, it will do it. Then when the second record of 103 comes in, when it scans the cache, it will find the record for 103 in the cache, because we dynamically have inserted the record. Then as per the logic, it will return a value, so you can go and update it. This concept is called a dynamic lookup cache. So in the dynamic lookup cache, data comes in and puts the data into the cache. How it works, let us see. Let us go back to our SCD type 1. Customer ID 101 exists, does not exist, you insert it. If it exists, you update, you insert. If it does not exist, you insert it. So if the same record is repeated, if 101 does not exist in my dimension customer table, you go and update it. If the second record 103 John San Jose version 1.0 does exist, no, it does not exist, so you go and insert it. And again you check if 103 exists, yes, so you go and update it. So how will we do it? In a dynamic lookup cache, when you enable the lookup cache to dynamic, here is the concept, please understand it. It will put a new lookup row. It will give you a new lookup row. As soon as you create it as a dynamic lookup cache, it will create a column called a new lookup row and associated port. And associated port. Let me show you the functionality. As soon as you make it as a dynamic lookup cache, observe here, as soon as you make it as a dynamic lookup cache, you enable this, it will create one port called a new lookup row and associated port. It will create a new port called new lookup row and associated port. So now I am discussing the functionality of Informatica in the dynamic lookup cache. It will create a new lookup row. And what is the difference? How we can find the difference between two records, that is 103, two same records are coming, but there should be some difference between them, that is indicated by our versioning. If you observe this, it is the version which makes the difference between these two records. So just not 103, but there should be a change. How will I know a changed record it is? By the version. So you have a new lookup row, column comes in, which I will explain in a few minutes. Now you execute it. The functionality, please observe. Now you execute the HTTP customer. No data in the lookup cache. 101 goes, scans the cache. I have put only two columns, version and the customer ID. Scans the cache, record does not exist. So if it does not exist, if you make it dynamic, then if the record does not exist, it should insert into the cache. It will go and insert into the cache. When it inserts the data into the cache, if it inserts the data into the cache, then this new lookup row will be 1. Based on this, now we are going to discuss. This is a functionality. If you insert the into cache, in the dynamic lookup cache, if you insert the data into the cache, as I said, a new lookup row port will be created by Informatica itself when you make it as dynamic. So, while when you run the session, if as per your condition, if the record does not exist in the cache, dynamically means at runtime, while execution is going on, Informatica will insert the fields data into the cache of lookup. What are the fields as per our requirement? Customer ID and the version. So what will happen? Insert the data into the cache, customer ID and version dynamically. When it inserts into the cache, now the new lookup row will be assigned by Informatica itself as 1 if there is an insert. So as per our discussion, as per our logic, when it will insert the data into the cache, when it will not find that customer ID, when it will not find the customer ID in the cache. So when it will not find the customer ID, then there is no record corresponding customer ID in my dimension table or on the table on which I am doing the lookup. So if the customer ID does not find the record in that cache, means that customer ID record has to be inserted. I'm talking about our mapping logic. Inserted into the target table. So we will correlate both. If the customer ID does not exist in my dimension customer table, then it will not exist in my cache. So what should I do? If the record does not exist in the cache, you are going to insert into the cache. If you are going to insert into the cache, Informatica will set this new lookup row to 1. That is one concept. And if the record does not exist in the dimension customer table, as per our logic, that record has to be inserted into the mapping, inserted into the target table. So how we correlate? If new lookup row is equal to 1, then we are going to insert the data into the cache. So what we do? If a new lookup row, then we change the router condition. We'll get that new lookup row into this. We will take the new lookup row. Now we doesn't take customer ID lookup. We will take only the new lookup row. And if it is 1, our understanding is condition failed. Condition fails, so it went and inserted into the cache. So new lookup row, it will return 1. If it is 1, I am going to insert the data. So in the router group 1 condition, I change the condition to new lookup row is equal to 1. So I go and insert the data into my cache. Insert the data into my target table. Second record comes in, scans the cache, does not exist. So it will insert dynamically into the lookup cache. If it returns, if it dynamically inserts the data into the cache, then new lookup row will return 1 value. So new lookup row goes out. Based on the new lookup row, if it is 1, we are going to insert the data into the cache. Now next scenario. So when you execute it, customer ID, name, address, version, this is the data coming into the staging. This is the data in your dimension customer table. When you execute it, this is the data in your lookup cache. Now record by record Informatica process. First record comes in, scans the cache, record exists based on the customer ID, on which the condition customer ID is equal to customer ID. If the record exists, it goes and updates the record in the cache. If you make a dynamic lookup cache, if the condition is satisfied, it will go and update the record in the cache. When it updates the record in the cache, then what it will return? New lookup row is equal to 2. So if it inserts the data into the cache, new lookup row is 1 by itself by Informatica. If it updates the record in the cache, if it updates the cache, when it will update? When it finds the same customer ID, based on your condition customer ID is equal to customer ID. If it goes and updates, how it will update? I will introduce the concept here of versioning, associated port. Or I'll come there in a few minutes. So it will update the data in the cache. Customer ID is equal to customer ID. So when you use new dynamic lookup cache, it will, when it updates the data in the cache, new lookup row will be 2. New lookup row will be 2. It will return value 2. So if it returns 2, what is our logic? Our mapping logic for ourselves. If it returns 2 means it has updated the cache. That means for the corresponding customer ID, which is coming from my staging, a record exists in the dimension customer table. So if it is exists, what we should do? As per our logic, we should update the target table. So as per our logic, if new lookup row is equal to 2, look at the router transformation, I changed it. If new lookup row is equal to 2, it will go to DD update, and it goes and updates the record in my dimension customer table. So new lookup row will be 1 when in the lookup transformation data does not exist, dynamically it inserts into the cache, the new lookup row is 1. If it goes and updates the record in the cache, then it is new lookup row will return 2, 1 or 2, and also 0 also, which I will tell you in few minutes. So new lookup row will, if you insert into the cache, it will return 1. If you update the cache, it will return 2. Now based on 1, 2 or 0, 1 or 2 or 0, what you want to do, you have to understand and create your mapping. But this is the way lookup works. Now let us take 103, scans the cache, does not exist, so it goes and inserts it into the cache dynamically. If it inserts, new lookup row is equal to 1. Then router 1, as per our logic, if new lookup row is equal to 1, then it has to be inserted. It goes and inserts it. Then the next record of 103 comes in, scans the cache of your lookup, does not, it exists. Cache, it will exist. It will find the record. So new lookup row will return 2. Scans the cache, it will go and update the cache, it will return 2. When it returns 2, as per our logic, it should go and update the record. So it will go and update the record in Informatica. This is how dynamic lookup cache works. So if you have multiple records of the same customer coming on the same day, then you use new lookup row, use dynamic lookup cache. So in the new lookup row, column or the port, the value it holds is, if it inserts into the cache, very clearly we have to understand this concept, please. It's a very, you enjoy doing it in the project. New lookup row, port will contain, then it will contain 1, then you have inserted into the cache. It will contain 2, then you update it. You neither insert it nor update it, then it will return. You neither insert it nor update it. Neither insert nor update the cache, then it will return lookup row will contain 0 value. How are we going to do it? I'll give you an example and look at it. Let us assume I'll give you an example like this: customer ID, address. I give you the address. I'm thinking. Let us assume that you don't have version. A business scenario I will take. Let's say you have email. This is where I will come into picture the associated port. 101 Vijay, address Hyderabad, email XYZ. 101 Vijay moved to Chennai, XYZ. 101 is still in Chennai, but he changed his address to ABC. Now what happens in the projects is, you may have 40 attributes to your customer, but they say that only if any changes to these columns happen, then only you make it to update the record. If there is no change any of these 5 columns, do not make any changes to that target table. That will be a scenario in business requirement. So as per my business requirement, this customer ID address email, they gave me a requirement saying that if a new customer comes in, you insert it. I am talking about a target table. The same customer ID is modified, but the columns it has modified, if it is address only, then you go and update it. If other columns are modified, no need to update it. It will be the project's requirement. Now, let us assume you are doing dynamic lookup cache. On the same day, you can have multiple records. This is what happened on the same day. Assume there is no data in the cache. So in the dynamic lookup cache, there is no record. So what is understand it? It's saying customer ID, and if it is modified, only address, not the email or anything changes, don't get it. So I'll put address also. Now when you run this mapping, assume it, when you execute it, customer ID, there is no record in it. When 101 comes in, this is your lookup cache. This is your lookup transformation, and it will contain new lookup row, then customer ID and address, and customer ID input and address input. Now please observe it. Now in this, what you have, 101 and Hyderabad. Scans the cache. Record does not exist because this is dynamic. It will go and insert the record into the cache. What does the new lookup row will return? Return 1. Now as per your requirement, whatever you do, go and insert it into your dimension table. The same session, second record comes in, 101, 10.9. It scans the cache, record exists, 101 exists, but it will check, is there any other column? To put only address, what will happen? Understand very clearly. 101 exists, no change. Is there any change? No change. Or I'll put it this way. Let us come back here. 101 Chennai, scans the cache, record exists, change for this address. It goes and updates the address field in your lookup cache and returns 2. New lookup row will return 2 because it has updated. If it is inserts, new lookup row will be 1. If it updates, new lookup row will be 2. So based on your 2 logic, you go and update the record in your informatica target table. Now please understand the criticality now here. When 101, third record is coming in, 101 Chennai has come into the lookup cache. From this source again, 101, third record I am talking about, scans the cache, record exists, fine. We'll check, is there any change? Is there any change? No change. There is no change to this record. It will not update it and it will return a proposed code. There is a change. Only it will update. It will not update if there is no change. Not update if there is no change. there is no change, new lookup row will become. Now with the new lookup row is equal to 0, what you want to do is up to the mapping logic. So if there is no record in the cache, it will insert new lookup row will become 1. It will go and update. When it will update, if there is a change, then it will update the cache for that particular record of that columns, then it will return new lookup row is equal to 2. If there is no change, record exists, if there is no change, new lookup row will return 0. So if it inserts, new lookup row will be 0, 1. If it updates, when it will update, if it finds a change, a difference from the record coming in from your input to the cache, then only it will change it. It will return 0 if there is no change coming from the source to that lookup cache. So then it will return 0. These are the fields for the new lookup row. This is the way Informatica new lookup row works. Now there is another port called associated port. Now let us go back a step back and understand it. What is this associated port? I am removing all this. For example, we put only customer ID and customer ID input, observe it. First record comes in, 101 comes in, there is no records in the cache, 101 comes in, scan the cache, does the record exist or not, scans the cache, record does not exist, so it will go and insert into the dynamic lookup cache, the new lookup row will return 1, based on 1, whatever your logic you have inserted the records. Then the second record is coming in. When the second record comes in, 101 of the second record. I am talking about this record, number 2. When it scans the cache, it finds 101. There is no change. 101 is equal to 101. So a new lookup row will return 0. But we want to, in this scenario, on which column the changes happen, that you have to consider it. Those are called associated. In our case, let's go back. Are you clear? 101, when the second record comes in, it scans the cache and it finds the record. So it will not update the cache. Why it will not update? If there it finds a change. 101 is equal to 101, there is no change as per the fields. So it will not update the cache. It should put 0, it will return 0. So in projects, you should have some changed record. Some column has to be changed. If it's the same, it will return 0 only. So I want, that's why you use port called version. As per this mapping, what is our case? Version, we'll put it as input. And we also take the version from the lookup transformation. Now let us discuss. Customer ID, version I'll put it. Please observe it very carefully. 103, first time when it comes, version 1, 103, 2. Let me go back to the mapping. That is the importance of the versioning. Version will indicate is the record changed record or not. As per this logic, as per this requirement, whenever a record changes in the source system, it comes with versioning. As per this business requirement only, please. Different mappings, different ways of doing it. So, as per our understanding, what we did, a change. When I reflect the change, same customer ID will not give the change. Any associated columns will give the change. So here in this business case, it is version which will indicate the change. So I used version as my input. and version from my lookup. Now you see 101 comes in, scans the cache, and it also checks for version input. Look at the version 2.0 is equal to, this is called associate port. You should not put it in the condition, please. It has only the associated port. So, 2 version scans the cache for version number 2, scans the cache. There is a change. There is a change for 101 is equal to 101. Condition is true. But version 2.0 and version 1.0, there is a change. So it will go and update the cache and it will return true lookup array is equal to. How to do it, I'll show you in a few minutes. Then 103 comes in, scans the cache, condition is does not exist. For this 103 there is no record exists. When it scans, so it will go and insert it. New lookup row will be 1 and it goes and inserts the record. Now look at the lookup transformation 103 2.0. Which column will capture the change it records? That column we will take it. In our case it is version. It scans the cache based on the condition, satisfied. But which column? Any associated port column has to be changed. If it does not change, then it will return new lookup row is equal to 0. So in our case there is a change in version. So it will go and update the cache. If it updates, it will return lookup row is equal to. So then as per the logic, it will go and update the record in my target table. So this is what is the importance of the new lookup row 1, 2 and 0 and importance of the associated port. There is a change in the associated port only. It will go and update the records in the cache, not only on the condition. So change update cache condition. There is no change. Condition is true, but if there is a change only to that associated port column, then it will go and update the cache. If it updates, then new lookup row will be become 2. Now I am going to do this, the mapping, and I'll show you. Prepare this one. Above. So dynamic lookup cache contains new lookup row and a associated port. Now I'll do the mapping for you. I'll do a new mapping for you, that is 11 underscore dimension underscore custom underscore dynamic cache. What is my source? HTTP underscore customers. Transformation state expression. Take all the columns. Now we will do a lookup. Please observe this very carefully. I am doing lookup on dimension customer. Can import the source. If you have defined the structure of your in a source, you can import it from there. Or in a target, if you have defined the structure like dimension customer, we have already defined it. You can take it from here. But I feel comfortable taking from this, connecting to this database and importing the structure. So here is the We'll take the customer ID as the input, and whichever is the column changed, which column makes the change. If it is 5 columns, you take 5 columns into the lookup transformation. But there should be a column which indicates just not the customer ID, other column, which is called as associated port. In our case, it is version. So we will take the version. So customer ID is your input, and version your input. With which columns we are going to compare is customer ID is our condition and version is our associated thing. So I need customer ID and version, customer ID input and version input. I'll specify the condition. Customer ID is equal to customer ID input. Now please observe, in the properties we will specify dynamic lookup cache. Please observe, write it down anywhere you want to write it down. How to do dynamic lookup cache? This is the way you enable the dynamic lookup cache. Enable the dynamic lookup cache, and you observe the ports. Automatically a new lookup row will be enabled, will be created or enabled, and it is output port only. It will return 0, 1, 0 or 1 or 2. Then condition we have given. Then we have to associate, because if you don't associate, then it does not know what is the change happened. That port we should associate. Here it is. This version ID, version from your lookup has to be associated to version input. This is associated port. To take this. So you are associating version to version input. So if there is any change in the associated port, then it will new lookup row will contain 2. So this is in which columns you want to check, not just on the customer ID, other columns you assign that associated port. Not in the condition, please. Condition, only one condition. Associated port, you specify it. And you say, and one more important thing, how you want to handle it. Insert else update or update else insert. Means insert the record is not found in cache, else update it. What is update else insert? Please read help. So insert the record is not found in cache, else update it. So I enable this. So when you do dynamic lookup cache, what are the things you need to take care? When you do the dynamic lookup cache, what are the things we need to take care? As soon one is specify the condition. 2, enable the properties to dynamic lookup cache. 3rd, associate port. In our case it is version. The version input. Then 4th, under the properties, enable set else update. Set else update to enable it. Condition same. Properties dynamic lookup cache enabled. Ports associated. Say OK. Now what we will do? Transformation. Create router. In this we will drag the new lookup row. Drag the new lookup row and get the target also here. Dimension customer. So what are the columns you need? Don't need dealership ID. Be careful here what I am doing. Customer ID to customer age, you take it. and here is the catch. Please understand it. The version you should take is from the lookup table. The version, the associated port should be taken from that lookup table. Associated port output. Then only it will change, it will check the changes, the associated port. Output of the associated port of the lookup column. Lookup port should be taken out. So the next transformation, to reflect the changes of the update into the dynamic lookup cache. Then only it will check. So this is the catch. You take that lookup port field of the associated out. You require the version. Don't take it from your source. You take this from your version, so it will change, make the reflected changes into the cache. That's the way it works. Then don't forget this. If you don't do this, it won't work, please. Please write it down somewhere. These are the steps. In interview, people will ask you, or anywhere if they ask you, you can be able to answer them. Then, in the router transformation, I'll create the group conditions for insert. What is the group condition? I'll do it. New lookup row is equal to 1. Say OK. Another group condition. For my update, I'll write the condition as new lookup row is equal to new lookup row is equal to 1. Then as per our logic, we need to insert into my target table. So I'll write update strategy transformation. From customer ID to version, I'll take it and put it in my update strategy. Again, from customer to version, I'll take it and put it in my dimension. Here I will put it as properties dd underscore insert. Next condition, create update strategy for my update. I'll take it from my new lookup row is equal to 2 condition, customer ID to version, double and get my dimension customer ID to version, and here I will put it as dd underscore update. Say OK. Save this. Arrange all iconic. So the challenge is this: the new lookup row, this customer ID, you have to put the version input. Condition same as customer ID is equal to customer ID. Properties, enable dynamic lookup cache, and also insert else update. In the ports, associate the version input. Then in the router transformation, we'll take the new lookup row equal to 1 for our insert, for update, and take the version from this lookup table column that are the associated port columns. That's the way Informatica works. Then other logic is the same. This is what dynamic lookup cache. We will create a session for this. Task to create session s underscore m underscore 7 underscore dimension customer underscore dynamic then the source connection, STG, two target connections, TGT, change bulk to normal, TGT, change bulk to normal, lookup, connection TGT, say OK. Then workflow, now I'll create a workflow. Okay. Now let us delete from dimension customer table now. If you look at the staging data, how many records are there? 1166 records. Now we will load the previous workflow, that is before we created the dynamic lookup cache. Execute that, then we will see how it works. So we have executed it before I made the dynamic lookup cache. Still running, succeeded. Now let us go to the target table. Select star from, if you look at the data, 5,883 records, but from my source, look at the record count, 6,160. So let us go to the session log file. We try to insert some records with customer ID 80, but it failed because uniquely constrained the target table. SCD type 1, customer ID can have only one record. So it was not able to update the record because of our discussion. The lookup cache will not have the data, but multiple records are coming. How do I know? Let us go to my staging table and show you the data. Select the star from STG customers, where I'll take one example where cust ID is equal to 80. For customer ID 80, there are multiple records, 1, 2, 3. So when it was trying to insert the second record, it is trying to insert it because there is no data in the lookup cache and it is not dynamic, so it failed. Those 283 records failed. 283 records failed. But failed because multiple records are there for the same customer ID, example 80. So now I will discuss with you with the dynamic lookup cache. We will delete the data in my dimension customer table. Or if you want to see dimension customer table before we delete, where first ID is equal to 80, it will have only one record. That is version 1. second and third record has to be updated, but we didn't update it because it was not a dynamic lookup cache, because it contains multiple records for the same customer ID. Now let us execute the dynamic lookup cache session. Let us start. So as per our requirement, it has to insert and those 283 records have to be updated. See, there is no 166. Let us go to the dimension table. After it has loaded, get the data. What is the final record it should contain? Version 3. 1, 2 and 3. It has 3 versions, 3 records with 3 records of customer ID. Then it has updated. First record is inserted version 1. Second it updated. Third it updated the records. So this is what is the dynamic lookup cache. This we are done with dynamic lookup cache. Dynamic